Yeah. Yeah, it definitely also depends on the type of customers you target. So maybe also referring to Christopher Jan's model of mouse hunting or whale hunting. So it really depends on whether you have a transactional sell or maybe in our conversation or the topics that we speak about, I think like self-onboarders or self-subscription, self-sign-up is less of a topic, but we're really talking about actual sales processes where humans are involved. So then when you have a very transactional sell with very large deal sizes, obviously the conversion rates and number of demos that you have and also the time that it takes in order to send the offer and then ultimately close the customer, they're totally different than when you just hunting very big whales, like very big enterprises, and maybe within a certain market you only have 20 customers that you can win for your business at all, and it just like takes a long time to educate them. You need to reach out again and again. Like obviously that's super different. But if I'm redefining my sales processes and if I want to learn how efficient my team is from holding a demo to actually closing the customer, like what would you recommend? Like what are the KPIs that I can take in order to make my team better in order to get some benchmarks, because I assume there must be like at least like some benchmark that I can use or to find out whether my team works efficiently or not, or how do you typically tackle that problem with your customers? What do you do to help them here?
So typically, like one thing that we really like to do whenever we feel or we see, okay, something is potentially not as optimized as it could be in a demo, we try to set up a really close like call tracking approach. So then we have like a roster for ourselves, which are like 10 different dimensions of like that basically go through the entire demo. It starts off with the introduction. It's then about like welcoming again all participants, trying to make sure that all participants are actually addressed, and it basically touches each and every point within a demo. And then we try to set up like a simple Google spreadsheet of what we're really trying to determine, like on a grade basis, from like 1 point to maybe 5 points, 5 being the best and 1 being the worst. Like, how do I evaluate right now these different dimensions? And then you typically tend to see, if you do like 10 or 20 of these like demo check-ins of where you're participating like with a Y cable or basically you're dialing in, you tend to see rather fast of where you're struggling, of where your team struggles. Is it rather the beginning? Is it rather the small discovery phase, or is it rather the demo or the closing part towards the end? And then you see like clusters, and then you can tackle those clusters with like specific measures. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that we love to do whenever we feel, okay, something is a little bit off here, and then you can take one step back and try to conceptually think about like what you have just seen, and then compare that against a potentially ideal model or the way you would like your team to conduct these demos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would be super interesting to me, because I mean, in parts we're also trying to tackle that problem with demo desk. I think knowing how your demo should be structured in theory is definitely a different thing than the actual implementation of it.
Oh, so, yes.
It first, of course, depends on the team size. So if it's only one person, if it's only a one-man show, it's quite easy to improve the demo process based on expert feedback and based on feedback from a sales expert like you, right? So I could just go to you and say, hey, can you please listen to my demo structure and tell me what I can improve? And then it's fairly easy for me to adapt. But how do you make sure that the changes that you identify and the improvements that you identify are also implemented across a larger team that's, let's say, more than 20 people, for example? Mm-hmm. How do you also then measure whether it has been successful in the end or not? Like, are there certain tools, or do you use certain tools, or what do you do to ensure success afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Very good point. So I usually look at like 2 different aspects. The first one being is like, how do you actually get that knowledge into an organization? So let's assume you have developed a new demo script, you've made some changes, etc. And then, like in my experience, there's quite a lot of gap between like what we're training and then what's being implemented really in the team. And based on my experience, I came up with a rule. I call it the rule of 10. And the rule of 10 constitutes for me in our business that before you're actually talking to a customer, before you're talking to a customer with a new and a different approach, etc., you need to actually make sure that the things that you've been changing, that gets really practiced at least 10 times, so that the 11th time that you really want to use it in practice, that became your new normal. And so everything that we do, whenever we're making a small change, being it in the pitch or in the demo or in the closing, whatever it is, we try to come up with like the opportunity that the entire team actually practiced that new change at least 10 times. So that can be like that you're participating in a role play, that you are the judge over a role play between two other of your colleagues. That can be, we do play objection bingo. So it's a pretty cool game of where you're playing bingo and you have to like cross off on a matrix if you got like bingo. So creating like opportunities so people exchange and actually dive deep into the topic. And then the second part is like once you are applying the new approach to reality, that you need to track like at least 10 more times if they've been applying it themselves during these demos. So just like a small tick off sheet of like, hey, it worked or it didn't work. So that can be then afterwards reviewed with your manager. So that's like an approach that we like to take. So rule of 10 or rule of 10 and rule of 10. So rule of 20. And the second thing, obviously, would be a KPI based coaching. So having a thorough database when it comes to like the different steps in your sales approach, and then doing like deep dive sessions that the team leads or the head of sales actually has the capacity to really do deep dive sessions, and then work again with them based on where the spread is like larger when it comes to like the conversion rate and comparable benchmarks for this specific aspect. But then obviously you would need to roll out a true KPI based coaching model to an entire organization, and that obviously requires some processes as well. And then last but not least, of course, it always helps to have a great product that helps me to track how my team is actually going through demos, that forces them to actually input relevant stuff, just like, for example, Demo Desk, which does like a very good job in my mind.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think it's especially interesting to hear about the coaching topic. So you said a KPI-based approach definitely makes sense, but you also need to have the time in order to analyze and listen and go through all these calls, right? So what is your experience with tools like Gong or Chorus that enable you to automatically record every call and then even analyze a larger number of calls and store them in a database? So it's more transparent to your sales coach where to improve and how to improve, but also better and easier to share these calls across the team. Like, what's your experience with these type of tools? Like, do they actually help with this, or are they not yet there where they need to be in order to like really be a great help in improving demos, and why?
So when these two originally came out, I was so excited because I felt like, gosh, I mean, they are solving such an important issue in the sales process, namely like the optimization of the KPIs coaching model. Maybe until 1.5 years ago, I had a pretty good look into the different tools, and also my customers were looking into this. So the only data point is like maybe 1.5 years ago, and by that time, I was not yet really convinced about the quality and about the helpfulness about these tools. So I'm not really sure how they have developed until now. But my last touch point kind of was okay-ish. But if you would have asked me, like the recordings, for example, in a voice over IP system like AirCall, etc., they were already like very helpful, because there you could easily deep dive rather fast. Back then, when I checked into like the data aggregation from these different calls and the call transcriptions, etc., that was not yet super convincing. So I don't have like a good data point on the effectiveness. Have you seen them in action recently?
Yeah, I mean, we like constantly using these tools, like for our team to be more efficient, but also to get inspired about new features that we can, of course, also then integrate into Demo Desk. But also we do integrate with Gong, for example. So we allow our customers to natively integrate with their Gong accounts. So you can automatically push all the Demo Desk calls into Gong and store them there and analyze there, just like you would do with any other conferencing tool. So those are the 3 reasons why we like constantly look at them. However, from my point of view, they're great, of course, in having the ability to record calls across different systems, across different tools you have, and really to build up a consistent database of sales calls in order for your team to share them, to share successful ones, to share unsuccessful ones, but also to give sales leaders the ability to listen to it and constantly provide feedback. What's also a great thing there is that you can highlight certain moments in the call to make it even better and easy to understand, like where the point in your customer connection was that actually really made a difference, or where the point was where you could have improved the call. So that's also super, super helpful. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to really like analyzing a conversation and deriving deep insights, and maybe even replacing the sales coach and like not having him go through this call and then understanding what could actually have been done better, I think we're not yet there in terms of technology, right? Because speech transcription and technology is not yet where it needs to be in order to make sense of a large amount of data without additional context, and that's also where the issue starts from our point of view. So we're also trying to give more insights into sales calls with Demodesk and help you to structure the call that you have with the customer. So by using playbooks in the call in real time, you can actually say, well, the first part of the call, the first 10 minutes, that was just the introduction. Then the second 10 minutes, there you identified and confirmed the pain points that your customer had. But also then the last 5 minutes of your call, where you really making sure that you follow up with the customer in all necessary single steps along the process and have a follow-up call scheduled. So this is also what we're trying to solve with Demodesk. But I definitely agree. I mean, the tools that can record calls and store them in a database are not yet there to actually replace a sales coach, and also like for a very long time won't be.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit the unfortunate part. And then ultimately, but what I think what they would do like a great service is that they're actually making the work of a sales leader a little bit more asynchronous. So that he can then, for example, at the end of the day, between 6 and 7, sit down and skip through like the most prolific, the most important like calls of the day, can then deep dive into those calls, maybe like skip them or like fast forward them, etc., and generate insights from that. Because before that, they were always bound to like the specific point in time when that demo actually was conducted, and then they would have to sit next to the person or on a different computer. And so that's like typically not a super efficient way of how a sales leader should structure their day. So really, for it comes to like later in the day, analyzing calls and giving good feedback to others, I think that's what those new tools are perfect for.
Yes, definitely. Also sharing calls across the team is way easier.
Oh yeah. That's way much easier than copying out and then sending them around, and creates all kinds of other issues.
I would have one very last question for you, which I would be particularly interested in. Do you have any secret tip on how to better motivate sales teams on top of like the common knowns? So anything that you do with the teams that you train with the customers in order to like really bring motivation to the max for your customers?
So I mean, we have our own sales team, right? I mean, we are 12 people, and we are selling our projects, etc. As well. So of course, we're applying these kind of things in our team as well. And a couple of things that we definitely do is like, I'm really always trying to think through, okay, so what is a really cool incentive model that really get people pumped for still delivering that extra push and that next project, and that so that it doesn't get too boring around that. So I think like money basically motivates, and that's like a good short-term motivator. We do some tweaks that, for example, we are able from our end to actually send out incentives really with a click of a button, and then within like 3 hours they are debited to a special credit card that our salespeople have, so they can then run with that. That's actually quite cool because it's like immediate, and you don't have to wait towards the end of the month. Mm-hmm. We really try to 2 to 3 times a year, we try to go after like specific campaigns. So, for example, if you really want to over-incentivize like a new customer so that they're not doing too much work with existing customers, that's what we like to really pay. I think still the good old bell. It's just like something that motivates people as long as they are still sitting in a room. And then I think the third thing is really a thorough understanding of public recognition. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really try to think through like what kind of like events, what kind of like even virtual events can I really create to highlight extraordinary work, and that's like really important. You don't want to like you still want to have like a sharpened sword, right? So it still needs to stand out if one person really does something great, and then it's great to share recognition within the team. But if certain team members are really just doing what they are required to do, or like maybe are at 95% to target achievement, then I would stay a little bit further away of like public recognition. But if people really doing one step further than anybody else, that's exactly where you want to when you want to reckon that in front of the entire group and celebrate, and the confetti cannon and like cool stuff they can do, even in the context and in the remote working situation that we're doing right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a super interesting interview. We will, of course, summarize the key takeaways and then also make a blog article out of it for the ones that can't afford the time to watch the entire interview, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it was fun speaking with you about sales demos. And as said in the beginning, I mean, software demos is really something that will also increase in importance going forward. And even more so with the current situation that we have, where everything needs to be remote and everything needs to be digitized. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was amazing to have you, and looking forward to hopefully meet in person soon. And all the best.
Great. Thank you so much, Veronica. Take care. Bye-bye.